Hey guys, welcome back to eCoreAcademy. My name is Aastha Kulkarni and I am the English 1 teacher here on this platform. Today I'm coming back at you guys with another grammar video. So this one is on verb tenses and verb forms, and it's basically just a continuation of all the grammar videos we've been doing. We're just moving on to different lessons, so this is the third one. If you guys are enjoying eCore's content, especially with the new teachers and everything, we would really appreciate it if you guys would just show your support simply by liking videos, commenting on them, and then most importantly, subscribing, hitting that post notification bell, and just sharing with friends and family or people who you think might benefit from our videos. So without further ado, let's just get started. So let's kind of just lay down the basics of this lesson here. Let's just talk about, what is a verb form? So a verb form is used to create different verb tenses. Now you're probably wondering, what's a verb tense? A verb tense is basically, if you might have already guessed from that word tense, it's just a verb that describes what time it is taking place in. So it's just the different times that a verb can take place in. So basically for verb forms, going back to verb forms, there's four principal parts or basic forms, they like to call it, of verb forms. And those are present, which is the base form or the most common foundation form. And then we have present participle, past, and then, as you might have guessed, past participle. So I'm just going to give you some examples so you kind of understand how these forms work. So these are just the same sentence altered to fit all the different four forms. So the first one we have is base form, which is present. And the example says, I worry when I think about the life ahead of me. So worry is in the present. Right now, that's what I'm doing in the present. I worry about the life ahead of me. Present participle, usually participles, they always have some sort of ending on it. So for present participle, we have ing. So the example is, I am worrying as I think about the life ahead of me. Past, we have I worried about the life ahead of me. As most of you know, in order to create a past tense, you usually can just add ed, but sometimes it does depend on the verb. So as we can see right here, we just added ed, and it creates the past tense. And then we have past participle, which is, I have worried about the life ahead of me. Now moving on, what is a verb tense? Well, to start off, a verb is a word used in a sentence to describe an action, occurrence, or state of being within a sentence. We did go over this in the subject-verb agreement video, so if you'd like a little more clarification on that, you can go watch that video and then come back and continue this one. And then a verb tense, as I mentioned previously, it basically expresses the time in which an action is performed. And the golden number, not the golden number, but the amount of verb tenses there are is 12. So you just want to remember there's 12 main verb tenses, and we're going to be going over all of them today. They're basically grouped into 4 different categories with 3 in each category. You'll understand when I continue, but it's pretty self-explanatory. So first we have the simple forms. I'm pretty sure mostly everyone knows these if they are taking some sort of English course. So the most basic ones, we just have past, present, and future. So past expresses an action that was started and finished in the past. So the key is that the action has already been completed. If the action is still happening, then it is not past. It has to be a completed action. And again, as I mentioned previously, most of these past forms end in ed. Next, we have present, which expresses an unchanging, repeated, or recurring action that only exists now or in the present day, and it can represent a widespread truth. So you're probably thinking, what does widespread truth even mean? Basically, the widespread truths for present would be, kind of those helping verbs. So if you say, I am happy, that is a widespread truth. It's always going to be true unless something happens. So in the present, I am happy, that is an example of a widespread truth. And then for the future, we have, as you might guess, it expresses an action that will occur in the future. So obviously, it has not happened yet. And these are formed by using the helping verbs will or shall. They're usually tacked on right in front of that verb to create the entire form. So we have some examples. These ones are all going to be about piano. So the past example is, I started my piano practice late this morning. So that already happened. I already started that. So that already happened. And we know that because of the ed tacked on at the end. In present, we have, I always start my piano practice later in the morning. So again, this is another, it is also a widespread truth because you're saying that you always do that thing. So this is a present because the start is in its simple form. There's no like endings or words in front of it. And then always is representing that widespread truth, which is saying that, every single time I start my piano practice later in the morning. And then in the future, we have, I will start my piano practice after tomorrow morning. So we haven't done piano practice yet, but we will start it after tomorrow morning. So hasn't happened yet, but we will get to it, and that is the future. Next, we have the progressive forms. These are probably the second most common forms. The next two groups we're going to see after this are kind of, a lot of people don't know about it until they get introduced to it in a course like English 1. So this one and then the following two are going to be ones that you want to pay more attention to because they're easier to kind of mess up and harder to understand. So first we have past progressive. It is describing a past action which was happening when another action occurred. So it uses was or were with the verb form ending in ing. Present progressive describes an ongoing action that is happening at the same time that the statement is written. And this form uses is, am, or are with the verb form ending in ing. And then lastly, we have future progressive, which describes an ongoing or continuous action that will take place in the future. So it uses will be or shall be with the verb form ending ing. A lot of you guys are probably like, what does that even mean? Don't worry, I'm going to be showing examples and then I'll explain how it all connects to this. But I just want to point out one key thing. There are usually patterns that you can pick up in each group. So the previous group we had were just the basic forms. There's not really patterns in those because those are all different since they're all different bases. But for the progressive and then the next two, there are going to be kind of patterns that you can pick up on. So as you can see, all of these have that ending in ing. It doesn't matter which progressive form it is, but they all have ending in ing. So that can be kind of like a visual clue. If you see ing, then you might know that, hey, that's a progressive form. So let's start with past progressive. All these examples are about the stock market. Past progressive, the example is the professor was explaining the highs and lows of the stock market. So you guys are probably starting to get a feel for this now. As I mentioned in the previous slide, you can use was before the ing verb. So we did use was and that made it past. So basically the sentence is saying that the professor, he was progressively basically explaining it in the past. So he's continuously explaining it in the past. So he was explaining. Present progressive, so basically the professor is explaining the highs and lows of the stock market. So the professor is continuously explaining it in the present. And that's why we use is, because even for the present form, is was one of the widespread truth ones. And then lastly, we have future progressive. The professor will be explaining the highs and lows of the stock market. So will be, that kind of indicates, hey, that didn't happen yet. That's going to happen. And then we have that progressive, which is, it is characterized by that ing after the verb. So then when we put will be in front of the explaining, it's going to happen in the future and it happens continuously. Next, we have the perfect forms, kind of an odd name for a verb form or tense, but that's what they decided to call it. So as you can guess, we have a past, present, and future perfect form. So the past one is basically describing an action that happened before another action in the past. So the past perfect uses had with the past participle of the verb. And again, we talked about that past participle in the first slide as one of the 4 verb forms, where we had present, present participle, past, and past participle. So we're going to be using the past participle for all of these perfect forms. For the present perfect, we have describes an action that happened in the indefinite past, and it uses have or has with the past participle of the verb. And then we have future perfect, which describes an action that will happen before another future action, and it uses will have or shall have with the past participle of the verb. So let's go over examples so you guys kind of understand how this all fits together. So we'll start with past perfect. By the time Jake arrived, the pottery class had ended. So had ended, remember, is that past participle. So it is in the past because we know that it uses ed. Remember, ed usually, it depends on the verb. Some verbs have exceptions, but if it has ed, it's usually, or it is in the past, but then some verbs that don't have ed can also be in the past. But if you see ed, automatically think in the past. So again, we're using that had in front of it, which makes it the past perfect. So by the time Jake arrived, the pottery class had ended. Present perfect, we have the pottery class has ended at 9:30 a.m. So that's in the present because we're using that that helping verb before it, which is has. So I just want to point out for the perfect examples, all of the verbs are going to stay the same. It's basically what the word in front of it is going to change the past from the present from the future. So you just want to look at those. So now we have has in front of it, which indicates to us that it is a present perfect. So the pottery class has ended at 9:30 a.m. And then lastly, we have future perfect. By the time Jake arrives, the pottery class will have ended. So it's in the future because we have that will have. It hasn't happened yet, but it is going to. So by the time Jake arrives, the pottery class will have ended. And then again, as I just mentioned, all of these have the ed. So all these endeds are going to stay the same throughout all these examples. You just want to make sure you look at these verbs in front of it. Almost done. We just have one more category, and this is combining the progressive and the perfect ones, which we just talked about. So we're going to combine that to make perfect progressive. It seems like a lot, but it's actually pretty simple. So past progressive, past perfect progressive expresses a past ongoing action that was completed before another past action. And basically this verb form uses had been with the present perfect of the verb. We just talked about the perfect, so when you see the examples, it's kind of just like morphing the two together. We have present perfect progressive, which expresses an action that began in the past, continues in the present, and may continue into the future. So it uses has been or have been with the present participle of the verb. And then we have future perfect progressive, which expresses a future ongoing action that will occur before some specified time. And it uses will have been with the present participle of the verb. So we have examples here. These ones are about dogs. So let's start off with the past perfect progressive. So as we did with the progressive, we know that all of those ended in ing. So that's kind of what we're doing here. We're just combining the two. So we're using some of those similar verbs that we used from the perfect form, some of the verbs that we used in front of the main verb. We're kind of using those here along with the ing component of the progressive forms. So as you can see, they kind of mix together to create, as you might guess, perfect progressive. We're just taking a piece of each form and then combining it to make one big form. So the dogs had been playing in the park for hours. The ing is part of that progressive, and then had been kind of makes it that perfect form. And then it's in the past because Obviously, you can't look at the ing because that doesn't indicate that it's in the past. So we're going to be looking at these words in front of it. And then the had clearly indicates that it's been in the past. And then we have present perfect progressive. The dogs have been playing in the park for hours. So we have that have been. So it's kind of saying that they've been doing it. Been meaning that it's still going on. It's continuous. It can go into the future. It has happened, which is kind of what that last slide was saying for the present perfect little note sheet. So it is continuous and it can still go on in the future. So they have been playing in the park for hours. There's no indication of if they've stopped yet. So that is how it can still continue into the future. But since there's no indication, it is only present perfect. And then we have future perfect progressive, which is the dogs will have been playing in the park for hours. So this is in the future. It didn't happen yet. In the future, the dogs will have been playing in the park for hours. Maybe right now they've only played in the park for 2 minutes, but in the future, they will have been playing in the park for hours. So that's kind of how it works. And similar to the last one, all of the verbs have ing at the end, so you cannot differentiate what is past, present, or future by just looking at the verb playing, obviously. So you're going to look at the verbs in front of it, and if you want to refer back to the note slides, which were in front of each examples, you can see which specific phrases are used in front of the verbs. And then if you want, you can memorize those, or if you kind of have a system in your head, which you kind of can already guess which one goes for which category, meaning past, present, or future, you can kind of just try to study those, because it's honestly really useful to have, because these are some mistakes that people end up making, but they don't even know they're mistakes, because it's kind of hard to figure out. But as you can see, this will help a lot. So that's all I have for you guys today on verb tenses and verb forms. We went over the 12 verb forms, which were broken down into 4 categories. We had the basic forms, the progressive forms, the perfect forms, and then the perfect progressive forms. So it was kind of a handful, but I really, really, really hope that this helped you out, even if it was only for one of the categories. I hope that some of these examples kind of helped clear out your head and kind of tighten in those concepts. So once again, these are all of our socials listed here. We have a Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. So if you'd like to check any of those out, those will be in our description box below. And again, if you guys are liking our videos, continue showing our support. It really, really helps us out a lot. So we'd appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you back for another English 1 video. Bye.